Okay, back to the basics here. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. We get into algebra and calculus way further along. But if we don't understand the process, if we go directly to calculus, so we go directly even to division, we don't understand the answer. You know, you use your calculator and the number comes out and you hand it in. I've dealt with engineering students where they're going to the 5th decimal on the weight of a yard of concrete. Okay, it's because that's the number that was spit out. So the basics, using a keyhole saw. Nice rough teeth. You can get this a little more advanced, so we'll call this addition plus if you use the carbide tips. Either one works. But when I'm sawing out with this, I'm getting a feel for whether or not the brick is much softer than the mortar and I'm cutting into the brick. I'm getting a feel that I'm banging into something on the back side. Well, because this isn't a broken brick. This is a tie brick. This is like this brick right here. No, it's not. Okay, this brick goes through 2 wides and then we've got the 3rd wide on the back side. So as we're using the hand saw, basic addition, we're getting a good feel for the mortar. We're getting a feel that there's something back here that I'm running into that I need to be cautious with if I'm using a more advanced, once I go to subtraction. So I know my brick, I know my mortar, I understand how things are feeling here. Advanced class, oh boy, now we got to learn subtraction. Carbide tip, regular saw blade, of a medium tip for woodwork. We can get the really advanced, the pruning tips that are carbide, but they're really aggressive. If you don't know your brick, if you don't know your substrate, we can clean these out very, very quickly and destroy more brick, destroy more mortar than we needed to do. So once we've learned addition, we go to subtraction and we can start removing much more aggressively. But I have to know what's going on here to figure this out. This is a broken brick, so now I'm going to end up having to take this one out, and that's fine, it was already pre-broken. But if I did this with a hammer, trying to knock it out with a hammer, I might be breaking more bricks around myself and causing much more work, and I'm the laziest guy out there. So we're starting with the basics and we're moving ahead. Multiplication, we can use an air-powered saw. Division, we can start using these electric grinders and cut out just the center piece. They sell us what are called tuck pointing blades now, which are wrong. They're 3/8 of an inch wide, so if you got a narrow joint here, you're going to open it up to 3/8 inch wide. You look at this building, everything varies somewhat. Even the line of where the brick is laid varies. So if we open up everything to 3/8 of an inch, that's not a 3/8 inch joint, that's 3/4, that's 3/8 inch. If we don't understand the basics, then when we move ahead further on, we're going to screw it up and not even know why. Hey there again, Blair Bates from Building Renovation LLC. So we've mixed our mortar over an hour ago. We've prepped the wall using a sawzall and a keyhole saw. And now we're ready to start thinking about laying our brick. Now first off, we're using lime mortar, and oh my gosh, it's been over an hour. The rule book says we got to throw it out now because it's too old. It's lime mortar, it's not too old. As long as it hasn't begun to dry, it's good for years. In the books of Vitruvius, the Romans said if you're going to do plaster, stucco work, etc., for very fine work, you needed to let that mortar sit mixed for 3 years until you're allowed to use it. So as long as it doesn't dry out, lime mortar is great forever. If we had to mix it all up today for this entire project here, and we've got lots of walls like this, we can do it in 55-gallon drums, we can do it in great big tubs and keep it covered. And let's say we're going to add some Portland cement to it. We still mix it up the same way, less lime. The Portland cement will be ordered by the batch and added to it by the batch. It still works. So we've got a fan running, so any dust I produce is pulling it out. That's an engineering control that OSHA requires. And I'm just cleaning my surfaces right now of the dust that's laying around. And as you can see, it's going the right way, not towards my lungs. I'm not holding my breath. Today it's supposed to be 93 degrees out, and the fog was so heavy driving here this morning. I was driving in a cloud of rain, and it wasn't raining. I was driving in the cloud. The humidity was so high and the cloud was so low. I don't have to wear a respirator. I'm not running HEPA-vac equipment because I've used an engineering control to keep the silica out of my lungs. So first I want to dust it. Is any of this dust going to become problematic later on? Not really. If there's a little bit of dust left on this absorptive brick, it's just fine. Once I lay the mud into it, it'll suck it up. I just can't have it as a bond breaker. We've already tested the brick by pouring water on it to make sure it doesn't have a pre-treatment of somebody putting a sealer, somebody putting a bonding agent, etc. on the brick, on the previous mortar. There's no latex added to it. Somebody at one time wanted to put an air conditioner in here, and so they just pounded a hole and away they went. Now, I want to pre-wet this quite well, but I don't want all my water going to the ground, saturating the carpet, getting things worse on me. So I'm going to use a paintbrush and a bucket of water to really get a good pre-wet here, because these bricks are able to hold 10 ounces of water each. And we've got all these bricks here. There's a lot of ounces of water that wants to be sucked out of our mortar that we're going to lay today. So I want to get it wet. So I can use a paintbrush. I can use a pump-up sprayer. I don't always like the pump-up sprayer approach. If we're doing tuck pointing, pump-up sprayer is pretty good. But we're not trying to mist it on. We're trying to get this brick that wants to suck up all this moisture. We want it wet. I don't want it so wet I'm going to float my brick, but I want it wet enough that as soon as I set the mortar down, it's not where I can't do anything with my brick. So how do I get this overhead, or how do I get a little misting on? I take my water bottle, I cut a hole in it, and I can do the exact same thing a whole lot quicker. Problem with a pump-up sprayer when you're doing mortar work is if my hands have mortar on them, my gloves have mortar on them, then the problem is it gets into the gland of the pump-up sprayer, and again, it's another cost. And now it starts bleeding, and I got to take it apart. I got to get the grind out of there and put it back together and start spraying again. It can be done. You got to keep your hands clean, but I'm pretty cheap and I'm pretty lazy. So what we're going to be doing is just laying our first two withes. A withe, by the way, is a thickness of brick. This is not 3 bricks thick, this wall. It is 3 withes thick. Proper nomenclature always works a whole lot better. It's going to be a while till I get up to this brick here, so I'm pre-wetting it to get the saturation program going, because I don't want to use, once I have fresh mortar down here on these bricks, I don't want to waste my mortar by washing it away, by being as sloppy and lazy as I am as I'm putting it on here. You see how that brick, there's a gloss and boom, it disappears? It didn't drip off, it went into the brick. All these bricks are trying to do that. Can I wet up here? Notice it's glossy and it disappears. It's glossy and it disappears. Staying a little bit longer on the bottom. Hey, get out of there. glossy, and it disappears. 10 ounces going this way. 10 ounces of anything behind it trying to suck it out of it. 10 ounces of this brick trying to suck this one dry. I cannot add too much water, but I need to have enough water. Do I have to do this? Why can't I just use wetter mortar like these guys did? Who said these guys did it this way? I don't believe they did. I subscribe to a lot of historic book centers, and so I read my butt to death. It used to be that we trained masons from a freshman in high school on. Now it's not that way in the least bit. And Audell has a book series, whether you're a carpenter, whether you're a tin knocker, whether you're a welder, that is from your freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. And it's revised every couple of years. So the series I'm currently working on right now is from the 1920s. And what we were doing in the 1920s with these older kiln-fired bricks that were not as hard, that were very absorptive, is they would take the bricks on the site, put them in a loose pile, not the way they come nowadays, in a big stack. And they would wet them down. Sprinkle it with a hose. And I don't know where they got their water from back then. If they didn't have city water, did they have some poor son of a gun running back and forth with buckets to the nearest pond? So I don't know. If we saw a frog in our brick, I guess we would know. This is a frog in our brick. Got you on that one, didn't I? Where the frog comes from, for any of you horse people, that's what the bottom of a hoof is. And when we take our knife and clean out the bottom of the hoof before we shoe them, it's called a frog. So a frog on a brick, when they would hand cast these, and these are definitely hand cast bricks, they are not extruded with a dry clay. They would slap them into the mold, clean the top off. Quite often they'd throw sand in so it didn't stick to the mold, and then pull them out. And as we threw it into the frog, that frog would push out. We have some that are big V shape that are more efficient, makes the brick a little bit lighter, kind of gives us a keyway, but not really. It's amazing, and here would be the keyway for the frog. But we're not relying on that frog for strength of our wall. Take a brick hammer, we clean it off. And now if we're going to lay a bed of mortar here and it's slowly getting the moisture sucked out of it, because I can't prevent all of it, I do what the book is telling us in the 1920s. I pre-wet my brick. Now, right now it's bubbling in my hand. All that moisture's dissipating. But you'll see I got a little bit of gloss. Now this came off the exterior chimney of this building. So this is where the masons would have used the hardest fire brick that they've got out of their kiln. Low fire is in the middle. The next one is here. So the weakest is in the middle, strongest is on the outside and in the chimney. But as you can see, there's no moisture left on this brick. I just dunked it in the water and there's no moisture left. We can get about 8 bricks in this 5-gallon pail. And in the past, we'd fill up a bunch of 5-gallon pails, we'd fill them full of water, and then work the bricks out. And the water would be gone with 8 bricks in a 5-gallon pail. So the outer face, a little bit shiny yet. I don't want to lay that yet. I could lay this side. This side is still shiny, and I got a little bit of shine. I've dunked it twice. So all my brick I will be laying will be dunked to brick. Do I put the frog up or down? I don't give a rip. I'll put it down. I've got to get it right here for my first brick as I'm starting my lay.